Alright. Welcome back, everybody. It's time to go over my proposed balance changes for the future of Starcraft 2. Zerg Infested Terran's back. Spellcasters get auto attacks so they don't run to their death. Spires build faster. Banelings extra hit points. Overlords move slower. Broodlord bug fix so that it shoots immediately. We've also got Ravager morphs quicker. A whole bunch of other stuff. Queen, hatchery, spore crawler changes from the last patch. Reverse! That's right, back to 150 cost queens. Get out of here, dumb balance council changes. Lurker gets its hit points back to 200. Terran, armories become invisible after armory again. Ghosts are now having a light tag. They're actually going to die to banelings. EMP completely redesigned. So it's not instantly draining shields while still being very effective. Raven has an auto attack, but Liberator becomes a dominator of the skies again with getting its range back. Widowmine's burrow quicker once again. Ghosts spell damage is back, so they blast the crap out of stuff. Back to 2 supply from 3 supply as well. Protoss, energy recharge gets a slight nerf. Observers and Oracle Vision a little bit nerfed, as well as hallucinations. That's right, Protoss is getting all the nerfs. Stasis Ward also is going to have its duration way down. But DT attack delay after Blink has been removed. Disruptor made great again. The original Disruptor, the destroyer of worlds, the big boom boy. The Immortal gets in there as well. No, none of this reduced attack speed from the last patch. Gone. Tempest also reverted as well. Whole bunch of bug fixes and more. Let's get in here and let's talk about it. Alright, so that was just a preview, but let's actually go through and talk about this since this is a theoretical work in progress. I say here in the forward, look, I'm putting this out to gain feedback from the community. The goal is to start a discussion so we can be prepared when the Classic Games department comes back to us as a community and says, hey guys, well, it says we're meant to patch StarCraft at some point. What do you guys want us to do? So ideally, I want us to already have a mod with a whole bunch of changes up there so we can play on it, host show matches, figure things out, discuss as a community, and do all of that. Unfortunately, of course, we're waiting until Blizzard fixes their arcade exploit and re-enables uploads. We may have a workaround around that for now, but we'll see. Obviously, until we actually get a patch, we've got to wait for that for sure, but maybe there'll be a workaround to test it before then. We'll see if that's possible or not. More on that in a future video. Until then, though, this is a purely theoretical discussion. Keep in mind that right now as the community, that is you reading this or listening to this right now, you have the power of the direction of StarCraft. But to exercise it, I would ask you to please take a deep breath, translate your passion and your feelings for this game into clear, direct explanations of your views on flaws and problems. Right now, your voice is heard more than ever in the community because guess what? I'm reading everything. I will read every comment on this video. As a community, we got the widowmine nerfed. We got the ghost nerfed. We got the baneling ability to one-shot probes nerfed because so many ZVPs were just... well, the main Zerg game-winning move was banelings just rolling into mineral lines all game. It just felt so silly, single banelings blowing up mineral lines. On the other hand, obviously, I think some of those nerfs may have gone too far, right? And that sort of stuff. But the point is, if the community shouts for something big enough, they've actually made changes happen. The problem that's happened is because there hasn't been a clear dialogue and a back and forth, I think a lot of the community doesn't realize that. And I just want you guys to realize I will be reading the comments and the whole process I'm going to be following here as kind of a guy who's just basically volunteering an insane amount of his time to try and get this done because I don't want StarCraft to just have nothing and then the Classic Games department says, oh, what should we do? And we go, oh, you guys are still patching it? Oh, I don't know. Here's 3 small changes that adjust the very top pro gamer meta slightly and nothing else happens, right? I want us to do more than that with StarCraft, and I really think you all actually have the ability to explain things. And if you do that clearly and directly, I'm obviously going to read it. If you're calling me a dickhead, I'm probably going to skip your message. That's just the way it is, right? I'm not paid to do this, but I really appreciate people who have contradictory views. I'm going to be changing this list so much. I am going to be going back and forth and testing things. And we've got a whole set of goals and philosophies we'll go over in a moment that hopefully will keep us kind of eyes on the prize and have a really coherent discussion. Do keep in mind, though, there are strict limits on what a community patch can actually do right now. There's no full-time Blizzard support. So redesigning the engine or making new graphics, abilities, any sort of assets that aren't already in the game is not possible. But if it's already in the co-op, the campaign, the multiplayer, things that are in there in the editor, our beautiful modding volunteers who basically are the heart and soul of the StarCraft scene. I love you guys so much. You're such legends. They can potentially work that in, and they can obviously mix and match those abilities and graphics a little bit to make things work. But generally speaking, if you want, a UI change, anything else like that, anything that's a bit too big, anything that requires special coding, it's just not going to happen. Likewise, as much as I have a list of bug fixes at the bottom of this that include things like the Masters bug that needs to get fixed, just keep in mind, this is not really the video to talk about that stuff as much, guys. I can't influence that. That's on the classic games department to actually fix those things. We don't know how to do that, just as a bunch of passionate modders in the community. We don't know how to fix the ladder system or anything like that. No, none of us have access to any of that code. So thank you for your patience, and I look forward to discussing these changes with all of you. Now, the overall goals and philosophy behind these patch changes are really important, guys, because in the past, when we've done patch changes, it's been, number one, how have we done patches in the last few years? It has been patches by committee. So, I want this thing, I want that thing, oh, you got the thing, I want the thing, going in every different direction. And even though there's been stated goals, one of the most frustrating things for the community is they read a stated goal. The most recent kind of viral one is, oh, we want to disincentivize turtle play. But then there was a few things that gave defensive advantages in amongst some things that removed some defensive advantages. People went like, what? What's going on? That doesn't... Idiots. And the problem isn't that happens. The problem is that when there's a stated goal that doesn't get met, there's no dialogue. There's no, oh, hey guys, we screwed up. We're going to revert that change. No, the change just stays. And the discussion doesn't go anywhere. So this is, you know, there needs to, it's not only is there, because you can't answer every dumb person's complaint on the internet, right? Every angry comment. But you can at least present a united front of coherence and say, these are the arguments and philosophies I'm sticking behind. And if there's a clear contradiction there, the community can pick that up and enough people can echo it to the point where there has to be a response. And there has to, oh yeah, you know what? No, you guys are wrong because of so-and-so. And you can explain why you're actually right as the person who's got more influence over that patch. Or you can go, you know what, I'm wrong. I'm going to adjust my goals here and philosophy because I still think my changes are right, but I've changed my view on the reason why. And that just creates a sort of coherent leadership in the community where people can have any trust or faith in what's going on. So this is going to be a system for you guys to keep me honest. As someone who, I'm not in charge of balance, keep in mind, but as someone who's leading the fucking discussion right now, because nobody else wanted to do it other than Harston, who at least put his foot out and actually started a bit of a discussion. So shout out to Kevin, I really appreciate him for that. But you know, that just no one else seems to want to do it. I'm just like, screw it. I'm volunteering a lot of my time. We need to, worst thing that happens, I waste a ton of my time and I learn a bit about game design and how hard it is. And I've always known it's really hard. I've always said I have no interest in designing Starcraft 2, balancing Starcraft 2. RTS is hard. I'd like to play them. I don't want to try and figure out how they work from the side of choosing how the balance works. It's a tough job. But you know what? At the moment, I don't really see myself as deciding anything. I see myself as basically just being a sort of avenue for you guys to all communicate. And I'm basically just, I'm the medium for a lot of people who are smarter than me, who are sending me ideas and reasonings. And I'm more of like a moderator of a debate, if that makes sense. And I'm trying to keep the discussion really like clear and focused. Anyways, let's get into the points. Number one, don't take away people's toys. Let's bring back as many great toys and strong points that many Starcraft lovers have enjoyed over the years. Nerfing the Baneling too much, nerfing the Broodlord too much, nerfing the Disruptor too much. Certain things that you guys know I've been a bit vocal about. But it's not just that. We've gone to it's timing attacks. It's certain build orders. It's certain styles. Too many have been nerfed down, combined with players getting better at playing against them, map design changing. Essentially, it feels like the options have become limited over time in StarCraft 2. So we want to try and bring as many individual unit strength back, buff units that don't get used that much, but also buff strategies that don't get used that much. I want to try to buff rather than nerf where possible to address issues as well. So if one race is a bit, their attack somewhere is a bit strong, I don't want it to always be, oh, minus that unit's hit points by 3%. Make that unit take 2 seconds longer to build. I often go, that's cool, let's keep it that good. But you know what? If the other team has another option that's even before that, or other attacks and things that open up that are also powerful, there's a self-balancing act inherent to that. And that's kind of the philosophy that I'd like to have wherever possible. Number two, SC2 is a well-designed game. Let's not break it. Let's limit introducing too many new factors to reduce the inevitable bugs that Blizzard will take forever to fix in the game. Or, I mean, we're really the ones who usually fix them, but then they take forever to click go on those patches. I'm hoping we can get a follow-up patch, say 1 month after the next big patch that we get, and say, Blizzard, please, Classic Games Department, just give us a follow-up patch. We have always found all the bugs, usually within a few weeks of it going live, because you just have so many people playtesting once it's live on the ladder that, you know, even when we've done a PTR, not enough people log on to play it to get that testing. And this was the same when StarCraft 2 had a full-time dev team. So just before anyone's like, no, you guys just need to test it more. It's like, yeah, dude, even when they had full-time paid teams, they didn't catch half of the bugs, not even half of them. So trust me. That's something we really need to do as well. Big one, too much scouting and vision limits the range of openings. I do think we want to increase the viability of hiding builds through nerfing some common scouting options, so there are more options to deny scouting and hide sneaky builds. One of the problems is, I think, like, for instance, we can talk about, like, Protoss, for instance, like, hallucination, pylon vision, observer build time, observer surveillance mode. There's been a lot of buffs to Protoss vision, and you can get to a point where you basically give a faction map hacks and then they still keep losing, and you kind of go like, hey, maybe we should not give them map hacks and make them actually have to play the guessing game or infer information sometimes, or be aggressive to get information rather than just getting free scouting or relatively free scouting, but actually make their other things better, because I think that's more exciting. Playing map hacks and then still losing half your games doesn't feel very fun to me. It's like, oh, I have the best vision ever, but also, and that goes for different situations as well, where like Zerg sometimes sees everything that's going on and still dies to something or whatever happens, right? So it's just one of those things where I think we should have the option where if you want to work really hard to hide a building and try to deny scouting, there should be a higher percentage chance of you being able to do that. And I was talking percentages because I don't think there's that many absolutes in StarCraft. Pro gamers and a lot of people talk in absolutes. I think it's very reductionist. It's very limited. Oh, this will always do this. This will always do. That's not how it plays out. In actuality, on the ladder as well as in tournaments, you see percentage shifts, and sometimes they're heavy percentage shifts, which can be a really big problem. But we want there to be, I think, a few more sneaky builds being at least possible. And I would like there to be a bit more options for weaker players in tournaments to try and play a silly gambly style. I'm not saying it should work a massive amount of the time. I just think at the moment it works such a low percentage of the time that you could have a player flip as many coins, play as many gambles, as many crazy builds as they want, and you still expect them to go 0-3 or 0-4 against Cyril in a best of 7. I would like there to be a higher chance of a mana or whoever taking a map, or who knows, maybe even occasionally 2 maps in those series, if they're willing to take those crazy gambles. That's my personal preference. I know some people don't like that, but you guys, as I said, if you guys disagree with me and these changes don't fill these points, you can tell me. That's going to help keep the conversation directed. But also, if you disagree with one of these actual goals and philosophies yourself, you can argue for that, and I might change these if you guys either can convince me or there's enough people in the community who kind of believe that way, right? No, there's a problem with this. Terran already has the weakest scouting of the 3 races. Don't at me about orbitals, guys. Obviously, orbitals are amazing endgame when you have a lot of them, and you don't need the minerals because you're maxed out and you've got mineral banks. But in the early and mid game, skipping scans, mules to scan is the most expensive form of scouting, essentially. Way more expensive than Overlords or Zerglings or hallucinations or oracles flying in, that sort of stuff. So it is something which is not really used at high level of play. It's very inefficient. Yes, it cannot be blocked, which sucks. I feel that, guys. You want to hide a build and the other guy's like, he's doing something weird and he scans. He might be able to see your building. Unless you hide it. Which is why if you hide in the natural, he's less likely to scan there than in your main. So think about it, guys. If you really struggle with scan, hide your buildings in your natural or in a corner of the map. There are ways, like scan is actually very limited and it costs a lot of money to do. So just keep that in mind, because there's a lot of people who I don't think have played a lot of high-level Terran who always bring up the orbital. It is the best late-game scouting. We could say overpowered, right? It's one of the most powerful, crazy things Terran has in late game is when they have mass orbital. But in the early build-up stage, you watch pro play, there's a reason why those pro Terrans are playing blind. And I know some of you will say, oh, pros are just stupid. Trust me, they're not. They're not stupid. I sometimes make fun of them for being a bit stiff or stubborn in their play. But when it comes to scouting, scan is something you want to use very sparingly because you are giving up so many minerals to do it. Outside of nerfing Reaper Ledges, how do you nerf Terran scouting? That's a map pool choice, the Reaper Ledges. This is not something I'm going to talk about in this patch. Or do you fundamentally redesign Terran's detection options and how scan works and Mule? Maybe that's so vast, it's a bit beyond the scope of what is a realistic patch right now, I think, with the amount of testing and resources we have. I don't want to tinker with the inject mechanic, the chrono boost mechanic, the mule mechanic, like, these core fundamental things, because I feel like I already want to change and tinker with so many things, and I don't want to expand to the point where it's massive changes with far-flowing consequences that are impossible to predict. So we are basically saying let's just nerf Zerg and Proto scouting in the early and mid game, and that's going to favor Terran in terms of the balance of power between the races, because Terran is the one with the better timing attacks, you could argue, than Zerg and Protoss already. And now you can't even scout them, right? What are you doing, Pig, you idiot? Well, we need to keep an eye on it and see what else needs changing to compensate. Remember, my goal with this patch is about balance of strategic options. It's not about Terran, Zerg, Protoss all getting to exactly 50%. That is, of course, a goal, but it's a secondary goal. First, I want to open up as many different strategic options, build orders for each faction, and then focus on getting the numbers right. So a lot of people get very eyes up in front of the problem. They go, oh, no, but that'll make your race too strong in this situation. And I want to say, just take a step back, look at the bigger picture and think, okay, that will be hard to deal with. What could help compensate for that? And for instance, I generally favor, rather than nerfing Terran all-ins and timing attacks to bring them down to Zerg and Protoss power, bring Zerg and Protoss up to Terran's power by giving them more effective all-in options. And that's something you guys can help me brainstorm with and come up with ideas for as well. Also, things like battle cruisers. You know, if you can 100% deny scouting on your BC opening and it just teleports through the fog of war, maybe consistently hiding battle cruisers makes it a really strong thing. It actually becomes a super solid build order when you can consistently hide it. My point is just an example. I don't know if that will or won't, but it's just, you know, we've got to keep a close eye on those things. Just showing you guys, I'm aware this is a big change, but yeah, we'll watch it. We'll think about it. Key goal! More viable playstyles across all races and matchups, including potentially game-ending power spikes. That's right, guys, game-ending power spikes, yes. If someone just kills you because they hit an attack or they do a big sneaky thing, I'm okay with that. All-ins should not work 0% of the time or 5% of the time. Same time, we don't want to see 8 racks 80% of the time, right? In ZVT. That's too much. We're seeing too much 8 racks in that matchup, but it shouldn't be 0. You know, I think a lot of all-ins at the moment just have such low win percentages, especially at the highest levels. And I'd like there to be a little bit higher for those and that sort of stuff. And there should be the potential for game-ending power spike. I think there's been too much of a focus in StarCraft. If something's frustrating, if something's annoying, if something's hard to play against, if something can just end the game and a slight anticlimax, people go, oh, well, that's not exciting. Look, I think of mixed martial arts. There is nothing worse than getting really hyped for a fight between two big heavyweights and one of them knocks the other one out in the first 6 seconds. I mean, it's exciting, but it's like 6 seconds. You're like, oh, that was it. Oh. But that's what makes the sport exciting, is anything can happen. And you kind of need to have games that just end. Because the problem we've had in StarCraft 2 in the last 5-10 years is we've gone, oh, this thing's annoying, let's remove it from the game. This thing's frustrating, let's remove it from the game, or nerf it down. To the point where you get to this point where it's like, well, you start to lose your suspense in a lot of situations. Because there's not as many options and things that happen. I'm not saying, obviously, there's still a lot of variety in StarCraft 2, but it is a narrower range of variety, right? And it's become more standardized in getting to certain points in the game a lot more frequently. And that does make the game less exciting because there is a lot less, ooh, what could happen here? You know, I really love football, soccer, because even when a team's heavily favored, it's very hard to score in that game, and every goal is so important. There are quite a lot of upsets that happen. There's always the chance that you get that lucky goal and you just manage to clog it up and not let the other team score. And like, there's always this, ooh, what's gonna happen? And that's something where I think just having that suspense is really good for enjoying playing and watching the game. And it feels like, for me as a player, it gives me a lot of agency. As a commentator and a viewer, it gives me a lot of suspense. So I want to focus on opening as many options as possible, worry about getting the exact racial balance as a secondary thing. We already talked about that. And note this list aims to start with ambitious changes that can always be scaled back if we feel it's too much all at once. All right, now let's go over the actual changes themselves. I kind of skimmed them at the very start. Let's talk about them a little bit more. So first of all, Zerg Infesta. The Infesta is going to get the infested Terran back. And this is a spell which a lot of people are nostalgic for. They've missed it. It was a cool toy. Why did we take it away? There's 2 reasons, guys. Number one, so basically, they buffed it. They gave it a rocket launcher because Zerg struggled with anti-air, especially in late game. Corruptors weren't that good, they felt like, so they added a rocket attack, about Legacy of the Void time, I think early Legacy, which shot further range, did more damage, and it made the Infested Terran just way more effective as an anti-air unit. And it actually became a kind of primary anti-air unit, and combining with like Broodlords and Fungal, it created these standoffs where if you could just Fungal the Protoss army or whatever, the air army, you just throw like 1,000 Infested Terrans on the ground. And the best move was to never fight it for the Protoss or whatever. Sometimes they could storm them down, but usually it was to just recall or get out of there. And it would create these standoffs where you'd throw down all these eggs and the enemy would be like, well, I'm just not going to fight that. And the Zerg's like, okay, well, now I got to wait for that 4,000 energy to regen, so I'm going to try and avoid fighting as well. And you get these kind of weird standoffs. So I think that rocket version being such a good late game and anti-air unit was a big issue, but I still think it was a cool unit. And I'm like, come on, bring it back. Was it a little overpowered at a few points? Yes. But that is why we are giving the non-rocket version back. But not even the initial, because the initial version, I believe, got upgrades. And so we're going to have no benefiting from your attack and armor upgrades and no rocket launcher. So you are dropping, essentially, it's like a super marine. It's very slow at moving, but it's similar to like a marine, right? Maybe kind of like a stimmed marine with a few more hit points is what you would say. but it doesn't scale with the upgrades, which means obviously it doesn't, get more powerful. It actually gets weaker as the game goes on, and therefore is weaker in those late game stalemate scenarios. Doesn't have the good anti-air attack, which is so good in those late game situations. I would actually say if this version's too weak, we could actually make it get those armor upgrades. But I just think it's a cool idea to try out. And if it does end up being very boring, we don't ever see any interesting harassment or cool additions and engagements, okay, no worries, we can take it out of there. But it's a cool ability. I know some people are like, oh, I don't like free units. Yeah, I agree. It's not really the same as like a Swarmos that just throws units endlessly, though. These guys take a while to spawn, and then they really are very, very slow. You can just walk away from them most of the time, and they're not going to scale that well to the end game. I feel like it should be really interesting to try out. Obviously, if it's too strong, kick it out of there. Next up, Infesta gets a regular attack like a High Templar snowball. You guys know the High Templar got a little snowball so it doesn't A-move in the front and die. Why don't we have that? Why? It's in the campaign. Why did Blizzard never add this? I don't know. Why are warp gates on a hotkey, but hatcheries and barracks aren't automatically on a hotkey? I honestly don't know what the fuck Blizzard was thinking. They added a bunch of cool quality of life specifically to Protoss. I get the warp gate is because, like, well, noobs who play mouse only can't use warp gate because they have to look at two different areas of the screen. How do they select the gateway and then get back to warp in? But come on, man, like, just there's no reason not to add this. It's a quality of life thing. It's going to be a meaningless attack. It does like 4 damage every friggin' 2 seconds. It's basically adds no actual combat power. It's just there to stop the unit running in front of your army and getting itself killed. Yes, it's going to help noobs. But we've already done this with the High Templar. If you're going to open the floodgates, open the floodgates. Instead, they open the little sluice gate. They let a little bit of water through for the High Templar, and then they closed it. It's dumb. Do the same for the Viper. Why not? Just give it the same. Meaningless 2 damage every 2 seconds. Whatever it is. These things are in the campaign. There's no reason not to do that. Spire, minus 6 second build time. Mutas are rare due to the long wait time for payoff and investment and ease of being scouted since it takes so long to kick in. It's one of the slowest structures in the entire game. The Hive is also 71 seconds. I don't think there's any other structures that take this long. Keep in mind, guys, when Legacy of the Void came out, we swapped from 6 workers to 12 workers. That massively sped up the economy at the start. And yet all the tech stayed the same. Except then they realized after a few weeks on the beta of Legacy of the Void, they said, oh, this is weird. People are on 3-base economy with like mass slow zergling and mass marine. This is weird. Okay, let's knock 20 seconds off link speed, stim, and warp gate. Oh, okay, now it feels a bit more natural when those, upgrades for the tier 1 units kick in now. Okay, that's good. Left it there. So they fundamentally changed the economy system and the pacing of the game. And then it was very ham-fisted how they did. They didn't change anything else. Don't get me wrong. It's hard to do. But, and I don't think we can go through and change the tech timing of every single structure and every single thing. Maybe we can. Maybe we just take, 10% off everything or something like that. 20%. I don't know, 10%? Probably 10% off everything. I don't know. Maybe we could do that. In this case, though, this is just one where that spy is just sitting there for ages, takes forever to kick in. We don't see mutas that much. I think a 6-second buff is not so crazy that from the Protoss or Terran side, you're like, wow, it's unbeatable. On the other side, we're making sure we don't buff it too much. If you're a Zerg going, why only 6 seconds? That's BS. You got to keep in mind, as a Zerg, you unlock that tech structure and you can just build 20 Mutalisks. Protoss and Terran can't do that, if there's a lot more time to scout. Oh, he's gone 3 Starport Battlecruiser, he's gone triple Stargate Tempest, and then he's chronoing those units 3 at a time, and now he has 6 Tempests. It's so many minutes more delay than it is to build a Spire and build 20 Mutalisks. So this still does need to be a significant amount of time to make sure this is fair, but I think 6 seconds to me feels like it's a relatively safe change. I think that's actually pretty conservative, but you guys let me know. Next up, Baneling speed gets plus 5 hit points. Keep in mind the Baneling has been nerfed multiple times. It is still not going to get enough bonus damage from its upgrades to one-shot probes and drones with plus 2 attack. So that's still nerfed. Its damage got nerfed twice in, I believe, 2020. So it does way less damage to non-light units. That's staying. I'm not changing these nerfs. The Baneling is still significantly weaker than it was in like 2017 or whatever. But giving back the 5 hit points, because right now we are seeing one of the most iconic units of StarCraft 2 Zerg, and it is barely used in ZVT. It is part of the reason 8-Rax is so powerful. It is just in general not used that much. People are starting to mix it in ZVP a bit more, but even there, I've been joking that you make Banelings and it's just a storm targeting. You see a wad of Banelings moving around the screen, you're like, oh, I got a storm there. It's good defensively, but and occasionally they do break a player's defenses with Banes. But it's really it's sad to see essentially an iconic unit and a set of strategies that go with it that most people over 15 years have loved StarCraft 2 for have that shut out of the game. Let's give a little bit of power back. I think it was okay because mass baneling styles were a little obnoxious to play against. I agree with that. I don't think they were the prettiest or funnest to watch. On the other hand, I don't think those styles should be removed from the game. They just shouldn't be something that people do every single time. We want variety of strategies. Like, I love that people are using Infestas more in ZVT right now. I love that people figured out Roach Ravager in the last few years. Sometimes they go Lurkers, sometimes they go back into Ling Bane, sometimes people playing Ultra Rushes. Like, it is so cool that we see that variety. But I don't think it should come at the cost of the Baneling just being, like, barely used in pro ZVT right now. Overlord, I'm not sure if barely used is fair. I mean, it's had a lot worse results, right? Like, if you look at, like, Solar Maru finals and stuff like that, that sort of series is pretty common in terms of what we see with the Baneling play. They still win sometimes, for sure. Not saying they don't win at all, but they're definitely their success rate is being much lower. All right, guys, next one's a big one. In terms of reducing scouting, Overlord's movement speed is going to be reduced from 0.902 down to 0.8204, and that's going to bring it back to the Heart of the Swarm speed, massively increased from the initial Wings of Liberty speed, which was like 0.65 or something. They increased it by 25% in 2012 February because they just realized Overlords couldn't scout crap. But then they buffed it again in Legacy of the Void. I think going all the way back to Wings of Liberty is pretty big. I don't think we can do that necessarily. Especially on bigger maps, the Overlord will just never get there. Don't get me wrong, I think drone scouting is totally fine. It's a nerf to Zerg. But I think if we change it so Zerg has to drone scout or wants to drone scout, is that bad, guys? I don't think that's bad. As long as Zerg gets commensurate buffs in other areas and the balance at the end of the day comes down. So just try to think beyond. This is no. You're taking away my thing. That's unfair. Remember, I totally, at the end of the day, if I nerf you and wire, I would love to see bigger, stronger buffs in other areas and things like that. And so think about it just in terms of the idea of, remember, we want people to be able to deny scouting combined with lower amount of pervert pillars on modern maps, which we're already seeing, which I think is a good change. Even though there are pervert pillars, but they're off to the side a bit or further out. Like, they're not as obnoxious. It used to be, hey, I can see your gases and your mineral line and your full wall off and army moving in and out of your base with the pillar, which I think was ridiculous. I think now the pillars are much more like, oh, you can often see them move in and out, catch a glimpse of it, or you can poke in off the thing to see the gas, but there's just a bit more interaction going on there, which is really good. So anyway, you know, they can hide their builds more effectively from Zerg, unless Lings or a fast Overlord speed or a fast lair for Overseer are invested into. But there is another thing. We've got the history here of the Overlord speed. Oh, sorry. History of the Overlord speed here, guys. If you guys want to see those numbers. Now, if this doesn't feel right, we could reduce the Overlord's hit points so that it's easily sniped. Bit of a problem because they are like your depots. You don't want them to just get sniped too easily from Vikings, Phoenix, Void Rays, but that's one thing. The other thing that came up when I talked about this on stream yesterday, Scarlet was in the chat, a few other Zergs, and they said that's a big decrease. And I was like, is it that big? It's about 10%, right? You know, you've gone from 0.9 down about just under 0.8. It's like 0.78 reduction, which is like I don't know, an 8% nerf or something like that. Is that big? And we talked about it. I was talking about it with chat, and basically, yeah, because think about it. ZVZ 13 gas 12 pool is going to be way more common, right? These one base all-ins, and I was like, yeah, that's interesting. And my immediate instinct, as someone who's played StarCraft 2, like many of you watching, is yeah, that's bad. We can't. All-in will become strong. That bad. We can't do this because this is the zeitgeist. This is what every StarCraft 2, especially high-level players, have been thinking for years, and I think that's the thought process that's got us into the position where StarCraft 2 is now, where we've really streamlined a lot of the crazy options out of StarCraft 2 to try and create as... Got a tournament about to start in 20 minutes. I got to finish this recording. But we streamlined a lot of the sharp edges out of StarCraft in the interest of removing frustration, and I think we've removed a bit of the fun and variability as a result. What I was thinking is, like, likewise, Drone Scout, it should be an option, and if you want to skip it, it's a little bit more of a risk. I don't think having to play that poker game is the end of the world. Likewise, in ZVZ, pool first might just be the standard safe opening like it used to be back in the old days. Is that bad? Well, if they go hatch first, they're just ahead. Yeah, they're like a drone ahead. Like, if I'm watching Serral against Lambo, a match where Serral's very heavily favored, Lambo's a very good player, I don't think it really matters that much if Lambo goes hatch first and Serral goes pool first. Like, I just think that creates a bit of interest. Oh, Lambo took a gamble by going hatch first and he gets a slight lead. Like, that, to me, is somewhat interesting. Likewise, oh, you went 13-12. You took a big gamble because most people play pool first and you caught him going hatch first. Oh, he gambled. and got called out for it. You called his bluff. Like, that poker element of StarCraft, I know some people don't like there being any gambling, but I think a little bit of educated gambling and build choices is good, and if you want to play conservatively, play the pool first every game, you can do that. Cyril will play the pool first 9 games out of 10, right? Other players will play the 13-12 9 games out of 10. And not just ZVZ, but obviously like proxies as well. Like, do you drone scout? Rogue always drone scouts for proxies because he's not good at drone micro and like just finicky high APM defense of Marine SCV bunker rushes. He drone scouts every time he's playing like Maru or someone like that who's good at a proxy barracks Marine rush. He scouts at least half of the time with his drone because he, even with the fast overlords, doesn't feel confident defending it, and he's still an absolutely top tier ZVT player. So I think, you know, they're creating a bit of a triangle in the option of, ooh, do I go pool first? Do I do the all-in? Do I do the hatch first? Is more interesting than at the moment where you so rarely see the 13-12. You so rarely see the spawning pool first. And it's almost always hatch first. So will it create more vicious games where you just get bopped from an all-in? Yes. Is it hard even if you go pool first because your overlord might not see the lings leaving the base? Yeah. Maybe you'll have to drone scout in ZVZ. Maybe. The problem is, but if you drone scout, unless you send it at the very start of the game, you won't see if they're early pooling until your hatchery's down. Well, you can send your drone at the very start of the game and you can actually confirm if they're hatch first or not. On pretty much every map, I'm pretty sure. So I think if you send one of your very first drones, you could check for that. It's a big expense. You could do it that way. I guess for me, I'm a little bit more willing for there to be a bit more variability and a bit more gambling. And, you know, even if pool first into 4 Zerglings has to be a bit more standard or something like that, or you kind of have an overlord outside your base and overlord outside their base. Like, to me, there's a whole mini game that would get opened up there, and obviously we can make changes to adjust it as time goes on, but I'm willing to step into those waters. I think it would be much more interesting for pro players rather than just hatchery tech 3 base roach bane timings into each other repeatedly every single ZVZ at the moment. It's not a great matchup right now. I think we've got to be a little bit less afraid of these sharp edges in the game and opening them up. You guys let me know what you think. All right, Broodlord. This is one I recently changed. I was going to just revert all of the Broodling nerfs, but then I said, you know what? Why don't we try to stick to the vision of the Balance Council, which was make the Broodlord less campy, less A-movie, more of a move-in, kind of move-in, shoot, and run away unit. But I think it's been made... Its Broodlings are so weak at the moment that the only way you're going to make it more useful like that, because what they've done is they've nerfed the Broodlings a lot, but they've made it a little faster, is, hey, let's change the attack behavior so there's no delay on its first shot. This is the bug fix that was proposed in the last Balance Council patch, didn't go through. I made a video talking about how, from the patch notes, they clearly didn't understand what they were actually doing with it, and how they were trying to buff Broodlings at the same time, and I was like, hey, either do this or do the Broodlings, or, like, you know, and can you at least tell us in the patch notes that you know what you're doing, because you don't seem to realize, like, I was showing, like, it will... You know, it'll get its first volley off way quicker. Normally, a Broodlord comes in, it has to, like, wait, like, a second and a half, and then it starts shooting frequently. In this case, you can just shoot, move away, shoot, move away. It actually becomes this beautiful, like, unit that can interrupt ghost snipes, kill High Templar, other key units very quickly, be more effective as a unit that pushes in for a volley or two and runs away for a siege hit and run style tactical usage. It does make the unit more interesting in theory. Broodlings still suck. But I'm really keen to try this, because I wish the Balance Council, after that video I made, and I said in the video, do one or the other. You can absolutely buff the Broodlord. I'd love it to be a stronger unit again. But yeah, just make sure you actually know what you're doing. And instead it just got removed because backlash, and because there's a committee deciding, oh, there's backlash because Pig made a video saying we didn't know what we're doing, so we're just going to remove it. And I was like, I didn't say remove it. People are still coming at me saying, you got the Broodlord bug fix. I still don't think it's a bug fix because it's worked that way since the beginning of StarCraft. When a unit operates away for 15 years, and yes, is it a bit unintuitive and a bit weird? Yeah. I just don't think of it as a bug because, like, I've learned how to control Broodlords around that micro. Most players have, where they move into range to get the shot off and then they pull back out of it. Like, you know, there's this whole micro around it that we've developed. We know how to do that. And it's just this weird thing where it felt like communication was bad, and that was just a Balance Council problem of there being no communication, no one taking responsibility. So, I mean, I'm happy to try it. And if it seems too good or not good enough, we just go back and revert a bunch of the Broodling nerfs. The point is, bring the Broodlord back. Make the Broodlord a good unit again. Make it an exciting unit again. Make it an actual useful power spike that you can use to break positions or to find value. There are too many power spikes that I think have been removed from StarCraft 2, and I think that's one that Zerg should have back. All right, we're also going to revert a bunch of things from the Balance Council. So these are just the initial changes, and we're reversing it. So you've got to kind of flip these backwards. So we're reversing the Ravager build time. This is a change I pushed for a few years ago. I thought Ravagers were too good at stopping Protoss early and mid-game timings, and I felt like, hey, we really want Protoss to be a bit more active instead of just trying to turtle to late game and stuff like that and do 3-base, 4-base plays. It did not work at all. This was a terrible change. All it did was it weakened Zerg attack timings. That few seconds on morphing the Ravager, we don't see Protoss doing Immortal Sentry pushes because of this. We don't see an increase in Terran 2-base plays. If anything, I see more 3-base pushes. So I would say this abjectly failed. And I am one of the people responsible who said, I think this is a good idea, we should try it. But I think we should revisit it and go, it didn't work. It didn't meet its stated goal. Let's remove it. This is basic stuff that the Balance Council never does. I don't know why. I want to remove it. I would like to take away something that I contributed to that is bad for StarCraft. Can we remove that now? Can we be responsible? I'd like to get rid of that. Just give Zerg a few more options. Yeah, I was totally wrong. I'll own that. Queen Hatchery, Spore Crawler changes, and the Lurker hit point nerf have all been reverted. So basically, these are just all the changes from the last patch. They lowered the Lurker hit points so that it could still get two-shotted by the shit Disruptor. I'm going to rebuff the Disruptor, so that's fine. That goes back to how it was. Spore Crawler, Hatchery Queen, I just think this is awkward for Zerg openings. It's made Zerg feel a little bit more cucked in the early game, and I just don't think we need it. I also think because the Spore Crawler does so much damage, ZVP is more boring than ever. Adepts and Oracles aren't diving mineral lines as much. Instead, they're just going around the edge and picking off creep and trying to be annoying. It's like you've created a more static early game where the wild diving Protoss players have been disincentivized from being aggressive, and instead they're just like, I'm just going to chrono probes and just sit there with my dong in my hand making Stalker Storm and just probing up while the Oracles and Adepts just poke around and clearing. It's created more of an economic arms race and an even more samey early game ZVP. So I think we should revert this. I know people are like, oh, but that'll make Hellbat timings disappear again or something. Yeah, I get it. Like, I don't mind the idea of nerfing the Queen in some way. But I just don't think this was the change to do it. So I'm not sure. Maybe in the future we can revisit this. I just think, get rid of it. It also, for people who've been playing StarCraft for 15 years, changing fundamental thing like Hatchery and Queen cost. I know people who don't play as hardcore as the pros or myself, and unlike us who adjust in a day or two to the new mineral cost, it just feels weird for them, and often it turns them off the game. So I think we should revert that. Terran! All right, guys, we got the same widowmine change that Hearthstone proposed. This is the most controversial change. People are going, no! The widowmine becomes invisible after armory? No! There's going to be widowmines everywhere. I get you guys. I was really going back and forth on this. The reason I think this is necessary is I do think it's, don't get me wrong, it's a little annoying as a Zerg to deal with, but I do think Overseers are very accessible, and you can, especially if you do some run-bys and stuff, fight for map control with the Terran and do pretty well against them if you do a little bit of basic spreading. Is it annoying to play against? Yes, but it's also one of the strong things that Terran has. And the main goal for this is TVP. I get it affects TVZ as well, because now you need to make Overseers a bit more. Thing is, I don't know how it was at you guys level. Obviously, at pro level, high level, Terrans get a pretty fast second factory and go drilling claws in TVZ. So all this does is it speeds up by about a minute, maybe a minute and a half, some games, how early that the widowmines become invisible. It gives a slight shift forwards on that at pro level. And don't get me wrong, maybe at noob level, they never make drilling claws. They just keep making widowmines regularly. And now they just make an armory and they're invisible. And obviously that is a big buff. It is a buff. I'm not going to say it's not. But I don't think it's like the game-changing thing. I think widowmines currently are still hard to deal with for a lot of Zerg players in the mid and low level out there. Remember, the widowmine will still have its AoE nerfed. It still has a big red line that shows where it's targeting. Its area effect got nerfed in previous patches, keeping that. And it gives an attack alert when a widowmine burrows and targets your unit on the map before it fires. Just the moment it tracks onto a unit, it gives you an attack alert. These are all changes that are still there. But what we're doing is we're making it so that it can still give Terran a little bit of options for map control. So if the Protoss wants to dominate the map, they need to do a little bit more effort with either observers or oracles to go around and just use that detection to clear up that map control. I am thinking, if this change is too impactful, we can go plan B. Just make it so Armory can upgrade drilling claws instead of having to build an Armory and have a factory on a tech lab, which is just something you never have in TVP, which is what makes it so impossible to get drilling claws in TVP, which is possible. And actually, as we're saying this, optional change B, widowmine build time change from 21 seconds to 25 seconds. Something like, basically just add a few seconds, because when you've got a reactive factory, The amount of power that widowmines have as a splash damage unit, the fact that you can build almost 6 widowmines a minute out of a reacted factory is kind of crazy. Like I know, for instance, in TVP, I'll be going for a mass zealot style. If they scout me going mass zealot, I'm like, oh, it's going to take a while for them to get out splash damage to deal with that and stuff. And it's like a minute and a half later and they have 8 widowmines in their army. And I'm like, how they're so quick. Like, you swap the factory off a tech lab onto the reactor and you just held the widowmine key down. And like, how do you have so many so fast? It's kind of crazy how fast they build. On the other hand, you can't nerf it too much. I mean, you had to build a reactor for that. But yeah, they're very cheap, 75 minerals, 25 gas, and that. So I think if it's too powerful, but we want to keep that accessibility to force Protoss players to clean up the map with widow. Like, obviously, if they go and spread widow mines everywhere, that's not free, guys. It does cost them money and APM. But you might have to go vacuum clean a little bit, as mid-game TVP map control is a big weakness for Terran. It's a very big weakness for Terran on the ladder and pro level both. All right, guys, the Ghost. We've added a light tag. More vulnerable to Banelings and Colossus is the goal there. The goal is to make it less solid as a straight-up combat unit whilst retaining its spellcaster power. If this doesn't end up being enough of a change, we can swap it out or add one of the following. Reduce DPS to not have bonus versus light, just the flat 10 damage per shot, or reduced HP 100 down to 80. And maybe not flat 10 damage per shot, or just +5, you know, or just +5, so 15 versus light, something like, you know, something like that. Like, point is, make it just, it's still a combat unit, but it's right now it's a very good combat unit for both tanking and damage output, and just softening those a little bit. I mean, it is part of the Ghost design, is he's a combat spellcaster. I don't think you want to remove that completely. That is part of the identity of the unit, but, you know, just make it a little less obnoxious. And I think the light tag is obviously mostly targeted towards TVZ. The reason I like this change is because we're redesigning EMP, which will nerf the Ghost massively versus Protoss. You might be like, well, I don't build Colossus, so this doesn't help me. Don't worry, this does. It's going to still do a 100 instant energy drain, no change there, but the shield damage has changed. Now it creates an effect on unit it hits, kind of like fungal, you know, where like there's a graphic on the unit that gets hit by it that lasts. In this case, it's going to do the 100 shield damage over 2 seconds. There's also a possible bonus change, if that's not enough. Electromagnetic concussion, probably not an upgrade, probably just comes with it. EMP now slows psionic units by 50% for the 2-second duration. That's going to slow Archons and Spellcasters, just as a small bonus, since the shield damage is being nerfed heavily. If we want to try something crazy, we could make it a smaller, 20% slow, but affecting all units it hits. The reason I don't want to go straight for that is I imagine Terran being an extreme long-range firepower race that wants to gun down the enemy before they close with them. You add an AoE slow to Terran, tanks, libs, bio. It feels like it would be way too strong. You guys let me know. I mean, I've seen fungal and mech in team games. The enemy tries to close the mech army and a few fungals go out, and holy moly, it is crazy. Like, fungal storm is also, like, there's, if you have AoE slows combined with splash damage, and just long-range firepower, it's a crazy combo. But only 20% slow, you've got to throw EMPs out, you've got to have a lot of ghosts in your army. Hey, that might actually be something we could do. I think it would be a really cool idea as well, so something we can explore. Overall, this change allows EMP to still counter spellcasters effectively. It's a high skill, difficult move to pull off, and it does limit the instant damage, though, that can land on Protoss armies. It also can't stack. You can only put one effect on units. If you throw another one, it just refreshes the timer on it. So this will allow Archons to not be totally useless in TVP, which I think is a big problem for Protoss there. It is, though, a big nerf to TVP, and we will need to see other big equalizers, as the Widowmine change alone might not be enough to make up for this. And I totally see that this is a big change, but I think if you guys have played from the Protoss side, it does feel kind of, from both sides, right? As Terran, it's like there's this field of splash damage that your bio just gets obliterated by if you get caught out one time not looking, or something like that, or you just can't spread like a god. But also, if you catch them not looking, you like EMP, you delete the shields when they're in a ball, and then you just like stim and kill everything before like disruptor shots or anything gets off. It feels a little bit crazily brutal one way or the other. And I think this change lessens the brutality on Protoss army dying, but we might need to do some other stuff to not make it feel unfair, because I'm very aware that TVP is already a problem matchup for everyone that's not a pro gamer. In the late game, especially, you can see like win rates drop off a cliff past 15 minutes, 10 minutes, something like that, maybe 12, 15 minutes, something like that. And that's what I've always experienced in my Terran games as well. But that's kind of always been part of Starcraft too. So that's you know, like that's very hard to unwind that knot, but we'll talk about that more in future videos. The Raven now has an auto attack. Same reasoning as the Infesta as Viper. If this doesn't feel that great or not enough, we can also try out giving it a surveillance mode, so you can just siege it up. so it doesn't get itself killed. We can also try lower subgroup priority, so it doesn't block you from stimming when you accidentally select it. Because even if it's got an auto attack, it's still going to make it hard to tab over to it to stim your units and microing them, which doesn't sound big. Trust me, if you build some muscle memory playing high-level Terran, you will realize how effing annoying the Raven is. There is a reason a lot of even top Terrans will fly the Raven off and just go harass a base because they just don't want to deal with that extra thing that will inconsistently mess up their muscle memory. We're also going to remove the widowmine drilling claw nerf, guys. Just make it so they can still burrow really quickly. We're going to buff the Liberator. We're going to make it back to its original cost. So we are going to make it more expensive, back to 150, 150. Remember, these are reversions. We're reversing these. And we're going to give it 3 range. Back from 2, which I know map makers will hate me for, but I just feel like, look, if the lib gets in a nasty spot, the player can deal with it. I don't want map makers to have to bend over backwards for this. I think it's you know, as long as you can cut off the libs on the edges from getting to those spots. Libs are more expensive, and Fusion Core is pretty hard to get to, you know? It's okay. Look, if someone gets a really abusive lib spot on a map, we know that lib spot exists, the players know about it. Yes, it will sometimes create something that feels a bit unfair. Starcraft is filled with things that feel unfair. I would like us all as a community to have a slightly higher tolerance to things that feel a bit unfair once in a while. If it's getting... Every map has really bad lib spots and it ruins everything, that's a different story. But if it's one spot on Oceanborn or whatever... Oceanborn had a lot of spots, even with the reduced lib range. It was a map which had spots everywhere. But, you know, it's okay for there to be some issues on certain maps. And we can redesign maps and change things as we go as well. But I think the Liberator getting back some of its power would be really good as a siege unit, but also not making it quite so cheap as a harassment unit, because I do think the Liberator feels grossly unfair as a harassment unit. And I just did the 25 gas cheaper. I feel like somehow this 25 gas discount, Oliveira was like, let's just send libs into people's bases, and he just did it so much, and it's become a really common thing to just spam libs into people's bases. People have gotten really good at doing that, which is fine. It'll still be, you could still do that. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like give it a good siege power and make it a really powerful late game spike is a totally fine thing as well. Hey, that lib range power spike is scary. Broodlord power spike is scary. I think that's fine. I also want to give the ghost snipe damage back. Yes, it'll be good versus ultras. Supply cost will also be decreased back to 2. I like the light tag. I just think it's a bit more elegant, so we can just kill the ghosts a bit easier. The EMP is a bit nerfed as well. I don't think it also needs the snipe. So basically, look, I think it should have good spellcaster power. These changes aim to make it more of a spellcaster ability user. Lean into that a bit more than its basic fighting ability. It's still going to be a fighter, but just not as strong. More changes might be needed, of course. I am very open. I know the Widowmine and Ghost changes are going to be the ones the community hates me for the most, because those are ones the community screamed for. If we can think and brainstorm of other cool Terran changes instead of these, I'm very willing to feel like, nah, let's revert the Widowmine, keep the Widowmine and Ghost as they are. Let's change the Thor. Let's make that really good. Let's add the Warhound in there. You know, whatever it is. Let's make Hellbats move a bit faster. Whatever ideas you have, let me know. Because I don't think my changes are particularly inspired. They are a little regressive, and then I'm just bringing back old strength for Terran. But I also think these are safe changes. I remember when Libs used to be stronger. I remember when Ghosts could you know, move on the map a little bit more, whereas right now they're kind of cowering behind planetaries, and by nerfing the Ghost, we've almost incentivized Terrans to play even more like sitting behind the planetary fortress style in TVZ in that late game once it gets there. But, you know, I think there's a lot of discussion we can have about this. One of the main reasons I also want to do this is we don't see cute Ghost cheeses anymore. Where are the weird one-base Ghost drops? Ghost Hellbat timings? They don't exist. They don't one-shot Zealots or Roaches anymore with the reduced damage. And even though those are very niche builds, I do think it would be good to have back some of those strats. Even if they're most common below pro level, Masters and below, even at GM, you used to see a lot of Ghost timings get mixed in there. I just think variety at all levels matters in StarCraft, and I think by nerfing both the supply, but more importantly the snipe damage, we've kind of removed that a little bit from the game. Who knows, maybe we add back the quick snipe, the old 25 energy, 50 damage, pew, pew, pew. That one was probably more overpowered, but I would be curious to hear people's thoughts as well, because I really can't remember how that one played out. I was recently playing the Heart of the Swarm Nightmare campaign, and those ghosts were wrecking me with their little quick snipes. All right, guys, on to Protoss changes. The energy recharge, we're going to do a very slight nerf. Just going to knock 25 energy off it to slightly weaken it in terms of the oracles having endless energy and that sort of stuff. I might revert this and just not do anything, but I think having a little bit less energy on the oracles would be good, because it just has so much energy in the early game. You're still going to get 2 storms off of a Warp in High Templar and an energy recharge, which is still very powerful. Cooldown's still the same. But yeah, it's just gonna recharge 25 less energy. That's all. I think the Oracle has too much energy spams, too much shutdown and early Zerg aggro attempts, as well as too much scouting with hallucination in TVP. This also means warp in plus recharge only gives 1, not 2 storms. That's scrap. I was going to change it to 50, which would change that. That's an option we could do as well. Lower it to 50 energy. But we're not going to do that yet. Observer surveillance mode vision is nerfed. I think the observers right now, sieging it up so you don't have to it is already really good, but it gives a bit too much vision where often Protoss can see the Terran army without the Terran army having a reasonable ability to guess where that observer is and scan it, or scan their screen and look for it at pro level. So I just think nerfing that a little bit from a 25% vision increase down to a 15% would really lessen that information advantage. And remember, you can often move forward and just siege up and see their build without going as deep with it. I just think slight nerfs on scouting is big. We also discovered yesterday when I was going over these changes, the Oracle Revelation is currently bugged to 12. It is meant to be 9. It got accidentally put up to 12 in the last patch. No one's realized. This has massively changed late game ZVP, and no one's talking about it because no one's realized, as far as I know. Since its AoE is so big, it already increases the effective range by a lot. I want to lower it not just from 9 where it was previous patch. I want to lower it to 8. I just think oracles can tag from so far away, even when there's a cyclone that is on the edge and knows it's coming, and you can often see the buildings beyond the cyclone or whatever. I want the option to be there to have a chance at denying scouting. This is not a massive nerf. It's one range from what it was in the previous patch, but obviously this bug fix, I can't believe we didn't even know about this. This is crazy. All right, guys, my tournament's about to start, so I gotta get it. I gotta finish this. All right, guys, we're also gonna lower the vision of hallucinations. We're just gonna make it a bit harder to scout. I was thinking of making them take a lot more damage as well, was my initial change, but I've said, you know what, let's cancel that out. Let's just lower their sight range. It's easier to deny because they're going to accidentally fly into Marines, Cyclones, Queens a lot more because they don't see them as far away. It's going to take a lot more micro with your hallucination to see what's going on. I also think we should add the ability to hallucinate capital ships, not the mothership, but Tempest carriers, because why not? It would be really cool if you could hallucinate a carrier. I just think that would be cool to pretend you're making carriers. Why not? You know, hallucinate 2 Tempests, fly across the map. That's cool. Let's do it. Stasis Ward. Now, Stasis Ward, these guys get spammed right now, especially with energy recharge in a sort of meaningless manner, especially if we go back and just completely remove energy recharge. Option 2, just don't change it since we're nerfing hallucination and stasis. That's an option. There's also another option we have as well, guys. We have an option 3. Option 3, actually. Oracle attack is cooldown based. Can turn on laser for 15 seconds, but then 15-second cooldown before you can use it again. Means it's more of a drive-by unit rather than a game ender. Haven't thought that one out too much, guys, but someone suggested this yesterday, and I think that's a cool idea. So this is another way of like, hey, if we want to keep energy recharge, but just nerf the biggest problem points, which is the Oracle having unlimited energy and being able to gun down all the Zergolins in the early game, maybe that's the way to do it. Now, obviously, those numbers could be tweaked. Well, we could just Ling Flood and kill you. 15 seconds is nothing. Maybe, yeah, you guys might be right. Like I said, haven't thought that through, but you guys can discuss it more and let me know your thoughts on it. Stasis Ward, like I said, guys, so we want to reduce this so it only lasts 1.5 minutes, down from almost 3 minutes. My reasoning is spamming stasis traps is dumb. This is unironically a change that affects PvP the most. It does affect the other matchups, PvZ especially, but PvP is just a nightmare of you get an Oracle out and they don't, you just spam stasis traps, and if they blink into a stasis trap, it could just be game over, because by the time you come out of the stasis, your blink is still frozen at the start of the cooldown. It hasn't cooled down at all, and they're on top of you with their blink store because you just lose them all. It's just, the spamming stasis traps, it just feels dumb. I don't like it. It was from within a week of the patch coming out, I was like, this has got to get nerfed in the next patch. It feels stupid. It feels frustrating to play against. I also don't like people going for big all-ins and then their army walks into a stasis and that ends it. It's happening to the highest level players as well. It's ridiculous. I think basically by doing this change, you just make it so people don't spam them as often. You can put it down, but with more of a, oh, I think he might attack me in the next minute and a half, I'll put one down, rather than I'm just going to throw them down all the time, and they're just going to hang out and give me a 3-second, buffer where they could be useful. If this is not enough, we can change it to ghetto stasis. I don't know. I don't have a good name for it. Shit stasis, stasis snare, maybe is a better name. Stasis snare, I guess, where it slows movement speed by 50% for 10 seconds, which is actually potentially a big buff because you can kill the units when they're slowed. You can't kill them when they're in stasis. So I don't know how that would work out, but that could be interesting just to make it kind of cool. Other people said like reduce the area or something like that. But I think that just this is better. because there's not as many just thrown everywhere with no intention, but it's still, if you get one off, it can still be really impactful. I think it's cool to have big, impactful, crazy plays. I just don't like it when those big, impactful, crazy plays are spammed all over the map with no thought. You just fill up oracles and spam stasis traps everywhere. That's what I don't like. I like that there's big, crazy plays that can win games. I don't like them getting spammed with very little intention. That is what I don't like the feeling of, playing with or against. All right, guys, we're also going to reverse these balance council decisions. The disruptor is going back to its old power. Back to 3 supply, obliterate stuff. Amazing. There's a big change that the community's kind of shifted my opinion on. Option 2, right now, I'm figuring out some numbers for tiered damage. So it falls off in the wider area of the radius. I think this is probably good. And you know, it'll still be powerful. It'll still one-shot lots of stuff, but in a smaller area, and then doing damage, but not lethal, outside that, will be great. So someone in my chat came up with a bunch of numbers. I'm going to explore those and test those out and come back with some stiffer ones. The idea is I want the disruptor to be great again. I want it to be strong again. I don't want it to just be wasting your supply. It's really weird that like a lot of the great power spikes for Protoss, things like disruptors and Tempest, you know, it's like, hey, 5 supply Tempest. Hey, disruptors up to 4 supply. It's like you still have powerful units, but they just take up so much supply now. Oh, by the way, now we're going to reduce the damage as well. So yes, it takes up a ton of supply, and it doesn't even one-shot roaches, ravagers, or marauders. I don't like what they did to my boy. You can argue Disruptor's not a great designed unit. Let's try and maybe make it still feel powerful, but make it a bit more interesting. So this is something which I really need to come back on, and you guys let me know your thoughts. But I think having it in like a 1 radius or a 1.25, still do the crazy one-shot damage, and then it falls off rather steadily from there to the full 1.5 radius. Something like that would be good. Or even maybe make the radius slightly bigger, so it does like a very small amount in an even bigger area. Could be possible as well. We're also going to revert the Immortal nerf. Yes, it's going to go back to costing 25 more minerals, but its attack speed is way more important, so we're going to get that attack speed back. This is one which I'm a little torn on. I do want the Tempest to get its anti-air range back. So it's going to go back from 13 to 14. Remember, these are reversions, this section. But that would also mean if we're reverting the last patch, we're going to put its supply cost back up to 5, which I am a little torn on. I do think the Tempest should be more of a siege breaker unit in the late game, but you don't want to really be like massing them or anything. So I think we're just trying this out basically because my thought process is, and I should probably write this down. Oh, we've actually already written this, haven't we? Yeah, it's overall weaker against late game Zerg, but it's going to be a little stronger against Liberators. You guys let me know. I'm very much up in the air on this, and I'm once again aware of like, hey, how can we bring back like early and mid-game times? Where can we give Protoss a bit more power there? So I've been toying with a few ideas as well around like, do we give the Zealot a very slight buff? Do we give the Adept back 10 hit points? You know, things like the Stalker, it's very hard to buff the Zealot as well because not just Warp Gate, but the way Charge works, the way Blink works, make those units so mobile, but it's very dangerous to buff them in a large way, but potentially giving the 8 damage back to the Zealot. These are a few things I haven't written down here, but I really want to outsource to you guys in the community, because I do feel like my Protoss changes haven't been particularly exciting. I've talked to a lot of pros, and they've come up with nothing. And this has been my big criticism of pro Protoss players historically in the Balance Council. They never have good ideas. So I want you guys in the community. I think you guys are more creative. Come up with some good ideas. Where does Protoss feel like it could... There's a whole part of the game that they maybe used to use, they don't use anymore. How can we buff that? Do we give the Colossus +1 damage against armored units, you know, against non-light units? Just make it slightly more well-rounded. I'm not sure. You guys let me know. We are also deleting the DT attack delay after Blink, by the way. Why not? Just make the DT feel a bit more responsive. I think either way, it feels kind of BS to play against as a high-level player. If you're not looking and the DTs blink on you, but I don't think the attack delay changes that all that much unless you're Clem. Because this is a buff to blink DTs against Clem. All right, guys, we have a few essential bug fixes. Just to remind everyone, this should be the priority. If this gets a lot of people looking at it, I want people to remember this is number 1. The ladder bug. Stop putting new people in Masters. That has to be the number 1 thing that Classic Games Department fixes that is outside of our control. But beyond actual gameplay changes that we can change, and we've apparently already got fixes for, is the Protoss Assimilator bug, where workers rallied to gas drop as an idle bug. That fix on that caused probes to get stuck on building Assimilator despite having other orders queued. This rarely affects probes because they give orders much faster than most players. Only time it affects them is if they've got the probe next to the gas when they build it and then they shift click it somewhere because it thinks, oh no, I've got to wait for this gas to finish mine gas and then I can go do the next order. Very important to fix because this affects average Protoss players disproportionately and it's very frustrating for them. The Cyclone lock-on cooldown needs to get fixed, of course. That thing is locking on way too fast at the moment. Or its cooldown after it locks on and getting the next one available is too quick. Very frustrating and stupid to play against. Also, the Cyclone should get the proper attack upgrades, which it doesn't right now. It actually only gets +1. Should be getting +2 per attack upgrade. So that needs to get fixed. Not the biggest thing, since the main Cyclone attack is its lock-on, which doesn't benefit from that, but should get fixed. Cyclone, such a problem unit, man. Oracle, the Oracle Revelation we already talked about, need to fix that. There's also a Void Ray aggro range buff, which Heaven's brought to my attention, which I'd like to address soon as well. All right, guys, this is a lot of info, and like I said, this is me crowdsourcing you guys, problem solving, your thoughts, your processes. I'm going to be reading every single comment on this video. I know the last few balance patch and videos like this I've done, I've got over 1,000 comments, so I'm not happy that I am agreeing to do that, but I'm agreeing to do that. Please like and subscribe to help ease my pain, because I'm spending an immense amount of time trying to collect all this, get the chatter going, thinking of changes myself, reasoning them through, talking to pros, talking to you guys, and just trying to keep the discussion focused. Once again, remember, please keep it back on the goals and the philosophy. Argue for your own goals and philosophies that are separate to these if you want to. The main ones here are more viable playstyles across all matchups, reducing scouting so that every single interesting opening doesn't just get scouted and counted and then people just get funneled towards standard play. Don't try to break too much, and let's not take away and nerf people's toys. Let's buff things where possible. Let's bring back old toys, add new toys, rather than removing them where possible. All right, so where do you feel most restricted in your choice of builds and options, guys? I think I've got a good list to help things open up Zerg playstyles. I think it's a bit lighter on Terran and Protoss, and I want to hear where you in the community feel restricted in your playstyle, or where you think things could be opened up and options are missing that maybe used to exist, or what your perceived weaknesses or restrictions are. I think those should be the best areas to try and add options and strengthen different strategies to create more variety and freedom for everyone's playstyles. And I think often it's your mid-level guys who might be a bit more aware of that than the pro gamers who have their blinders on the most competitive, what they feel is the most optimal option right now. So you guys let me know, and I want to explore that and build upon this list. And like I said, if you're worried, this change is going to ruin my matchup, my race in this matchup, please, I'm not that interested in those changes right now. You can definitely mention it, but just keep in mind, think about, okay, how do we buff your team either in that area or in a different area rather than just nerfing that other thing? Or no, don't take away that, don't redesign that one thing you're changing. Just add more things. That's all you can do, you know? Just try to be as civil as you can, try to be as clear thinking as you can. And hey, I know people are going to flame me, but I appreciate it. So far, most people have actually been really good. I'm trying to be as open with you guys as possible, and I hope that translates to us kind of actually tapping into the untapped resource, which is the community's knowledge. There's a lot of people out there who have a lot to say, some of it correct, some of it incorrect, but a lot of it well-meaning, and a lot of it, even when people are a little off on something, it often gets me thinking about something. And then I talk to other players about where that thread leads us, and we like unravel and reveal and learn a whole bunch of really cool ideas. So let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Sorry this has been such a long video, but this is an arduous task, balancing and designing StarCraft to make it as interesting as possible, but we need to do that. StarCraft needs to have as many options as possible. We cannot be playing a click trainer that is just about doing, you know, the most standard path to 4 bases, and we just macro 4 bases, and then the mid game's really short, and then we hit hive tech and carriers and tempests, and then we complain about late game planetary ghost turtle being boring, you know, because we're racing to late game. At the moment, I think the community, myself included, we often race to the end game and then we complain about the end game. Let's try and open up more options before then as much as possible. Thank you so much for your support. My crazy patch video is still a massive work in progress, which is going to be much more insane than this one. It has things like the Odin, it has the Leviathan. The Mothership actually can take on armies in it. It's insane. It's crazy. We're still working on the giant hamster ball baneling as well, where you morph multiple banelings together into a giant baneling. It's really dumb. That I don't think will make it in. That'll be probably an honorable mention. Point being, let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks so much for your patience. I really appreciate all of your support, and I look forward to reading them. Thanks for watching. Goodbye and good night.